Cyberpunk 2077 has had a rough going ever since its release back in December 2020, but since then, CD Projekt Red has done a lot to remedy people's opinions about it. Patch after patch has slowly made Cyberpunk a much better experience altogether, and just recently, Cyberpunk Edgerunners dropped on Netflix and introduced a slew of new fans to Night City. Naturally, I watched the show from start to finish, and after getting to the ending of the show, I just had to drown out my sorrows by, as Johnny Silverhand would put it, burning Night City to the ground. So, after messing about for a few minutes on my old save before the final mission, I decided to restart the entire game in order to experience it like a new player, even if I know the story inside out by now. Now, if you played Cyberpunk on release but haven't revisited it yet, the first thing you'll notice if you do is that there has been a few changes to the character creation system, with a wider array of hairstyles being the primary change. I noticed that the facial structure on some of the options had also been slightly changed, but it's hard to put a finger on exactly what. After choosing to play as a corporal rat and playing through the subsequent intro, I started re-exploring Night City once more, and it's really easy to tell that the game is just much more stable in general, and it just looks really good, even without using ray tracing. Yeah, I know, ray tracing is some incredible technology and it really makes the game look more alive with all the improved reflections and lighting, but since I still only have my good old RTX 2080, the frame rate just drops way too much for me to enjoy the game. So I play Cyberpunk without ray tracing, and it still looks incredible. And my favorite Cyberpunk pastime of putting on some synthwave in the background and driving through Night City has just never felt better. Oh, and speaking of driving, it's just simply much better. All vehicles handle much better, and you can actually turn effectively now without flying off the street. Well, unless you drive like a maniac, like I do. NPCs and crowds has also been improved, as they'll actually react to whatever's happening in the vicinity, like properly running away from gunfire or pulling out their own guns to defend themselves, which makes the game feel slightly more alive since now a random Night City civilian can kill you if you're not careful. There will still be moments when NPCs react illogically or run into cars or objects, and I honestly think that this is something that'll never go away. And that's also something that I want to talk about in general. Even today, there are still bugs that plague the game, and you'll probably encounter at least a couple of them if you're playing it for the first time. Hopefully these aren't game-breaking for you guys, but as I can attest to, there were several times when the game just refused to load the next mission, or getting stuck on a black screen when loading up my save, and the game just straight up crashing for seemingly no reason. Did this kill my desire to keep playing? No, but it got frustrating to a point to where I decided that I needed to take a break. Thankfully, I could get into my save once again after a couple of times to continue my mission of burning Night City to the ground. But to say that it was irritating would be an understatement. Now, before I jump into what I consider to be the most important thing that's improved with Cyberpunk 2077, let's talk about the main reason most of you will be visiting Cyberpunk 2077 while you're watching this video: the Edgerunner stuff. So with the release of the TV show, it was basically guaranteed that we'd see references to the show. Why, considering that the show and the game are both set in the same universe and not some alternate version of Night City. Now, these things aren't exactly mind-blowing, but if you run around the city, you'll sooner or later hear a very familiar tune. And if you're like me, you'll break down sobbing uncontrollably as your mind races back to the events of the TV show. Anyway, you can also find an extremely powerful shotgun that belonged to a certain lowly character with a penchant for destruction.
What in the hell is going on?
And a jacket that belonged to David, the main character of the show. These can be found at locations that are important to the TV show. Speaking of which, all of the bars and apartments we see in the show are all present in the game as well. An example is that of Kiwi's apartment in Kabuki, which is now inhabited by Regina, or the apartment that belonged to the aforementioned Loli, Rebecca, and her brother Pillar that's located in Northside. There are a bunch of other locations that you can visit as well, but I'm gonna let you explore that on your own. Now, as much as I personally enjoyed the Edgerunners references, this is not the reason to why I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077 for the last 24 hours. No. Or well, sort of. If you watched the show, you'll know that David uses a certain implant to gain superhuman speed that he uses to his advantage. The cool thing is, you can install an implant just like the one David uses, the Sandevistan. With this little gadget jacked up into your spine, you can literally slow down time and chop bad guy after bad guy into confetti and clear an entire gang before they even have time to react. Combine this with the double jump leg implant and the knife throwing ability, and you really do turn into a cyber ninja. Now, this isn't something that was introduced with the show, but the cyber ninja build has really exploded onto the scene since the show came out. Jumping from rooftop to rooftop, destroying gang after gang is just so much fun, and if there's anything that keeps me staying with Cyberpunk 2077, it's all the different ways you can play it. But this is also connected to something that I want to talk about because it annoys me to no end. You see, you don't necessarily have to play as a ninja, as you can also play as basically a walking tank and use your gorilla arms to pummel your enemies into oblivion. Or you can be like me and go ham with hacking. With the right build, you can clear an entire area of enemies without even lifting a finger, or well, with the press of a few buttons at least. There's just something so satisfying in watching enemy NPCs panic as they all start dropping like flies just because you uploaded a simple virus, and you don't even have to get your hands dirty. As most old players of Cyberpunk know, another bonus with the intelligence tree is that you can unlock perks that let you hack into terminals that rewards you with money, which you'll be needing a lot of for all the things there are to buy in Night City. The bummer about all of this is that once you've chosen to invest an attribute point into a skill tree, say the intelligence tree, you can't get that point back. Meaning that if you want to be the ultimate cyber ninja or the ultimate hacker god, you will have to restart the entire game from the beginning. Or play the game until just before the final mission to reach max level, that being 50. But by then, you've most likely cleared most of the content of the game, meaning you don't really have much to do after that point. Yes, you can pay a sum of in-game money to reset your perks, but in order to truly unlock the most fun builds, you need to invest in the actual skill trees themselves in order to unlock certain perks. Now, there are mods for this, like this one called New Respec that I used to experiment with different builds. But considering that not everybody plays Cyberpunk 2077 on PC, not everybody will have access to this mod, namely the console players. So, CD Projekt Red, if you're watching this, add an attribute reset as well. Please. I think a majority of the player base would appreciate this, especially console players. And so, to finish this video off, yes, revisiting Cyberpunk 2077 after Edgerunners was worth it, and if you've been thinking about doing so yourself, I can highly recommend it. And for anyone new who's thinking about buying it, yes, it's worth getting simply for the story, because if you love the story of Edgerunners, you'll most likely love 2077's story as well. Whether you should buy it on console is debatable though. PC is definitely more worth it because of the sheer volume of mods you can install. And up until CD Projekt Red adds an attribute redistribution system, I cannot personally recommend it on console if you're just coming back for the gameplay. Oh, and they finally added a transmog system, so now you don't have to look like a bum when out patrolling the streets of Night City. And that's all for today. Have a good one.